All right.
Ain't nobody worried about her.
Okay. Better make
They
sense.
all auditioning for my spot. You know that, right?
How old are you? You feel me? Like, you weird. Straight up.
Why would I miss any female when I got Stunna girl? She gonna be here in the morning. She cooked better, she looked better, and she fucked better.
This didn't start as drama. It started as a warning shot. 1 minute Stunna Girl was moving comfortable. The next minute Chrisean Rock allegedly stepped in and checked the entire situation like she was auditing a mess she never signed up for. And right in the middle of it all, Blueface once again turning a love triangle into a demolition derby. Because when Chrisean checks someone, it's never polite. It's not a conversation. It's a message wrapped in chaos and delivered with receipts energy. According to the internet, things went left fast. Words flew, sides formed, and suddenly Stunna Girl wasn't just another name in the Blueface orbit, she was a target of direct pressure. Fans froze, group chats went viral, and timelines refreshed like everyone was waiting for the next explosion. This makes reality TV look like a table read. This makes celebrity dating look like a competitive sport with no referees. Because if even half of what's being whispered is true, this wasn't jealousy. This was territory being marked in public. Old tensions resurfaced. Subtle shades stopped being subtle. And Blueface, as usual, sat in the middle like the calm eye of a hurricane he definitely helped create. And once you hear how this confrontation allegedly unfolded, why it escalated so fast, and how the internet turned it into a full-blown spectacle, you'll understand why this triangle didn't just bend. It snapped. This didn't unfold like a misunderstanding that could be smoothed over with a phone call and a half-hearted apology. It arrived with tension already baked in, the kind that hums quietly before it explodes. When Chrisean Rock allegedly decided to check Stunna Girl, the internet immediately understood this wasn't casual shade or playful back and forth. This was pressure applied on purpose. At the exact moment it would sting the most, not to understand why this hit so hard. You have to understand the triangle itself, because this situation didn't appear out of thin air. Blueface has spent years turning relationships into public spectacles, blending romance, rivalry, and clout into one non-stop reality show that never goes off the air. Every woman connected to him doesn't just date a person. They inherit an audience, a comment section, and a permanent role in a storyline that refuses to end cleanly. Chrisean Rock has always occupied a unique position in that chaos. She isn't just another name attached to Blueface, she's history, volatility, loyalty, and unpredictability wrapped into one. Her presence carries emotional weight, not just gossip value. So when Stunna Girl's name began circulating closer to Blueface, the internet didn't see it as a coincidence. It saw it as a challenge waiting to happen. According to online chatter, Chrisean didn't ease into addressing it. She allegedly confronted the situation head-on in a way that left no room for interpretation. This wasn't cryptic captions or subliminal posts meant to stir curiosity. This was direct energy, the kind that makes people pause mid-scroll because it feels like something real just broke through the screen. The reaction was instant. Fans didn't ask if it happened, they asked how far it went. Screenshots started circulating before anyone could catch their breath. Commentary pages framed it as Chrisean drawing a line in the sand, while others described it as a long overdue eruption of tension that had been simmering under the surface for weeks. The word check became shorthand for dominance, boundaries, and warning all rolled into one. Stunna Girl, suddenly thrust into the center of the storm, became a lightning rod for opinions. Supporters argued she was being unfairly targeted simply for proximity to Blueface, while critics claimed she should have expected friction stepping into an already volatile dynamic. The internet loves a rivalry, but it loves one even more when it involves personalities known for not backing down. What made the moment explode wasn't just what was allegedly said, but who said it and when. Chrisean's timing felt surgical to fans, like someone choosing the loudest possible moment to speak. In a universe where silence is often interpreted as weakness, her directness was read as control. People didn't see it as insecurity, they saw it as authority being asserted. Blueface's roll in all of this only added gasoline. As usual, he sat at the center of the triangle without offering clarity, letting the chaos orbit him freely. His history of staying detached while drama unfolds around him has become a defining trait, and viewers have learned to read that detachment as strategy rather than indifference. Every non-response felt intentional, like he understood exactly what kind of engagement silence would create. The sarcasm online was brutal and immediate. Comment sections filled with jokes comparing the situation to a reality show where contestants fight for screen time instead of roses. Others joked that Blueface's love life needed a referee, a rulebook, and possibly a fire extinguisher. The humor softened the edges, but it didn't remove the tension. Because beneath the jokes was a clear understanding that feelings were involved and reputations were on the line. What elevated this from petty drama to full-blown spectacle was how personal it felt. Chrisean didn't come across like someone performing for clout. She came across like someone reacting to perceived disrespect. That distinction matters to audiences who have watched her emotional highs and lows play out publicly. When someone known for wearing their heart on their sleeve switches into confrontational mode, people assume something deeper was triggered. Old clips immediately resurfaced. Fans pulled moments where Chrisean hinted at boundaries, loyalty, and feeling tested. Past interactions between Blueface and Stunna Girl were replayed and reinterpreted with fresh suspicion. The internet began connecting dots that may or may not have been meant to connect. But once the narrative machine starts, it doesn't wait for permission. Stunna Girl's response, whether direct or indirect depending on who you ask, only fueled the fire. Every word was dissected for tone, intent, and subtext. Was it defiance or dismissal? Confidence or provocation? In these moments, neutrality doesn't exist because silence is read as strategy and speech is read as escalation. Either way, the triangle tightened. What made this opening chapter especially volatile was how familiar it felt. Audiences have seen this cycle before, where Blueface's presence creates a gravitational pull that draws conflict inward and magnifies it. The difference this time was how quickly it jumped from speculation to confrontation. There was no slow burn, no gradual build-up. It went left almost immediately. The public split into predictable camps. Some celebrated Chrisean for standing her ground and refusing to play passive in a situation that felt disrespectful. Others accused her of territorial behavior and unnecessary aggression. Both sides argued loudly, but neither could deny that the moment had shifted the dynamic permanently. Once a line is drawn publicly, there's no pretending it doesn't exist. Blueface's continued silence became the loudest element of all. People questioned whether he enjoyed the chaos, benefited from it, or simply refused to take responsibility for the tension he helped create. His absence of clarity allowed every interpretation to coexist, which kept the story alive and combustible. In this universe, ambiguity is currency. By the time the first wave of reaction settled, the damage was already done. The triangle was no longer a rumor. It was a battleground. Chrisean had made her position clear. Stunna Girl had been pulled into the spotlight whether she wanted it or not. And Blueface remained at the center, untouched yet implicated. As always, this wasn't just about jealousy or attention. It was about power, proximity, and who gets to define boundaries in a relationship that never stays private. The internet sensed that something had cracked, not shattered yet, but cracked enough to promise escalation, and that's what made this first chapter hit so hard. It wasn't explosive because it was loud. It was explosive because it felt inevitable. Like everyone had been waiting for the moment when whispers turned into confrontation. This was the check. And everything after it was bound to go left. Once Chrisean's check hit the timeline, the story didn't just escalate, it mutated. What began as a confrontation instantly became a cultural event, the kind that pulls in spectators who swear they're tired of drama but somehow know every detail within an hour. The triangle stopped being about three people and started behaving like a live experiment in chaos, with the internet acting as both narrator and accelerant. The first twist came from how fast the narrative split. Some people framed Chrisean's move as long overdue boundary enforcement, the verbal equivalent of slamming a door after weeks of polite knocking. Others framed it as territorial posturing, arguing that checking someone publicly only confirms insecurity. The disagreement didn't slow the story, it supercharged it, because nothing feeds engagement like to sides convinced they're morally superior. Memes arrived with surgical precision. Blueface was cast as the unbothered ringmaster in a circus he pretends he didn't build. Chrisean became the enforcer, the one willing to get her hands dirty while everyone else plays coy. Stunna Girl was framed alternately as the unsuspecting newcomer and the confident disruptor, depending on which comment section you wandered into. The jokes were savage, but they carried sharp subtext, because humor is how the internet processes tension it doesn't want to sit with. Celebrity reactions added layers without ever touching facts. Vague posts about knowing your worth, not competing with anyone, and standing on business popped up right on cue, each one read as commentary whether intended or not. Fans treated these posts like Easter eggs, decoding intent and assigning alliances as if this were a reality show reunion filmed in real time. The public outrage didn't just target behavior, it targeted dynamics. People weren't only arguing about what Chrisean allegedly said, they were arguing about why Blueface keeps finding himself at the center of female conflict without ever being the focus of accountability. That question lingered like a bad smell, because the pattern is hard to ignore when it keeps repeating with different names. Blueface's continued detachment became its own storyline. His silence wasn't read as peace, it was read as control. In the eyes of the audience, he didn't need to speak because the chaos was speaking for him. Some argued that he thrives on this imbalance, others claimed he simply refuses to babysit grown adults. Either way, the absence of clarity kept him insulated while the women absorbed the heat. Stunna Girl's response, subtle or direct depending on interpretation, only deepened the divide. Confidence was praised by some and condemned by others. Every word was weighed for disrespect. Every pause interpreted as intention. The internet doesn't allow neutrality in triangles like this because neutrality threatens the narrative. If no one escalates, the story dies. And this story was very much alive. Old footage resurfaced at warp speed. Clips of Blueface joking about relationships were replayed with colder commentary. Moments of Chrisean expressing loyalty were reframed as foreshadowing. Past interactions involving Stunna Girl were scrutinized for signs of awareness or provocation. The timeline became a collage of selective memory, stitched together to support whatever conclusion the viewer already wanted to reach. The pop culture comparisons went completely off the rails. People compared the situation to reality dating shows where contestants fight for attention while the lead pretends not to notice. Others likened it to a chess match where the king never moves but everyone else sacrifices pieces. Some even joked that this triangle needed a referee, a VAR review, and a therapist on standby. Absurd, yes, but effective, because it captured the ridiculousness of how normalized this level of public conflict has become. What pushed this story into full meltdown territory was the emotional projection. Fans weren't just watching, they were inserting themselves. People who had been in messy relationships took sides like this was personal history being replayed on a bigger screen. That emotional investment turned debates into arguments and arguments into crusades. Because no one likes seeing their own past reflected back without warning, influencers and commentary pages capitalized instantly. Reaction videos stacked up like dominoes, each one louder than the last. Some framed this situation as empowerment, others as dysfunction, but all of them benefited from the same thing, attention. The line between analysis and exploitation vanished, and outrage became the product. As the days passed, the triangle stopped being about facts entirely. It became about energy. Who looked stronger? Who looked bothered? Who looked like they were winning a game no one agreed to play? The internet doesn't reward nuance, it rewards momentum, and momentum was firmly on the side of escalation. The pressure reached a point where every move felt like a trap. If Chrisean doubled down, she risked being labeled aggressive. If she pulled back, critics would call it retreat. If Stunna Girl clapped back, it was provocation. If she stayed quiet, it was guilt or strategy. There was no outcome that didn't feed the machine, because the machine was hungry and the audience was feeding it willingly. Through it all, Blueface remained the gravitational center. Even when he wasn't speaking, everything revolved around him. That reality sparked another wave of criticism, with people questioning why the women involved were the ones forced to defend, explain, and escalate while he remained untouched. The imbalance became impossible to ignore, and that realization added bitterness to the spectacle. By the peak of this phase, the triangle had transformed into a referendum on public relationships themselves. The story wasn't just about who checked who, it was about why these dynamics keep playing out in front of an audience that claims to hate them but never looks away. The internet had turned the situation into a mirror, and not everyone liked what they saw. The outrage didn't resolve anything. It just rearranged loyalties and hardened opinions. People chose sides, dug in, and waited for the next move like spectators at a boxing match that had already gone too far. The tension wasn't dissipating. It was compressing, building towards something that felt inevitable. This was no longer a triangle. It was a pressure chamber. And when pressure chambers finally crack, they don't do it quietly. After the noise peaked and the timelines exhausted themselves, the situation entered the phase that actually matters. The one where the jokes slow down and the consequences quietly take shape. This is where public drama stops feeling entertaining and starts feeling permanent. The triangle didn't explode into a clean ending. It settled into people's perceptions. And perception has a longer shelf life than any viral clip. Chrisean Rock emerged from the confrontation with a sharpened image, whether she wanted that upgrade or not. To her supporters, she looked decisive, unapologetic, and unwilling to be disrespected in a situation that had already crossed too many lines. To her critics, she looked territorial and reactive, someone letting emotion dictate the narrative in a way that would inevitably backfire. What both sides agreed on was that she had taken control of the moment, and once control is claimed publicly, it changes how every future move is judged. Stunna Girl's position became more complicated as the dust settled. Being checked publicly, fairly or not, altered how the audience framed her role in the story. Some saw her as collateral damage in a war she didn't start, while others viewed her as a willing participant who underestimated the intensity of the environment she stepped into. The lack of a definitive resolution meant her silence or responses were interpreted rather than understood, which is a dangerous place to exist in the court of public opinion. Blueface, as always, walked away appearing untouched on the surface, but the undercurrent told a different story. His continued pattern of allowing chaos to orbit him without direct accountability became impossible to ignore for even his most casual observers. What once looked like indifference now read as a calculated refusal to intervene. And that shift subtly reshaped how people viewed his role in every conflict connected to his name. The public began asking harder questions once the spectacle cooled. Why did these situations keep repeating with different people but the same outcome? Why does emotional labor always fall on the women involved while the central figure remains detached? And why does the audience keep rewarding a dynamic it claims to be tired of? Those questions didn't trend like memes, but they lingered longer than the jokes ever could. Reputations adjusted quietly in the aftermath. Chrisean's intensity, once dismissed as chaos, started being read as boundary enforcement by some and volatility by others. Stunna Girl's confidence, once celebrated, became scrutinized through the lens of provocation or resilience depending on the viewer's bias. Blueface's brand of hands-off involvement began to feel less charming and more strategic, especially to audiences who had watched this pattern repeat too many times to count. Behind the scenes, relationships inevitably shifted. People around the situation became more cautious, not because the drama was shocking, but because it was familiar. Familiarity with conflict breeds fatigue, and fatigue changes how close people are willing to stand. This is the part of fallout no one posts about. The quiet distancing, the changed tone in conversations, the unspoken reassessments that happen long after the internet moves on. What made this aftermath particularly revealing was the absence of closure. There was no apology that reset the board, no definitive statement that clarified intentions. no final confrontation that wrapped the story neatly. Instead, everything remained unresolved, which allowed the narrative to live on as a reference point. Anytime these names appear together again, this moment will be dragged back into the light whether anyone wants it there or not. The triangle also left a cultural imprint. It reinforced how normalized public relationship conflict has become and how quickly audiences accept it as entertainment. The fact that such intense emotional exchanges can trend, peak, and fade without resolution speaks to how desensitized viewers have become. That normalization is not neutral. It shapes how future conflicts are perceived and how far people feel they can push before consequences arrive. For Chrisean, the moment solidified her reputation as someone who refuses to stay quiet when she feels challenged. That reputation brings both loyalty and criticism, and it ensures that anything she does next will be viewed through a more polarized lens. For Stunna Girl, the experience placed her under a microscope she didn't ask for, one that will follow her into future narratives connected to this circle. For Blueface, the situation added another layer to an already complicated legacy, one defined less by direct action and more by the chaos that seems to thrive in his orbit. The most uncomfortable truth of this phase was that no one truly won. Attention was gained, but trust eroded. Narratives were controlled temporarily, but credibility took hits in subtle ways. The audience got spectacle, but the people involved inherited long-term consequences that don't disappear when the algorithm refreshes. As time passed, the triangle stopped being a headline and became context. It was referenced casually in discussions, joked about with caution, and used as shorthand for a larger pattern of dysfunction. That is how scandals truly settle, not with fireworks, but with integration into the background noise of celebrity culture. The internet moved on, as it always does. But it did not forget. It rarely does. Every unresolved story becomes a pressure point waiting to be pressed again. And in this universe, pressure points never stay untouched for long. The next interaction, the next comment, the next appearance will inevitably be measured against what already happened. This chapter didn't close with answers. It closed with awareness. Awareness that love triangles fueled by public attention don't burn out. They smolder. Awareness that checking someone publicly changes dynamics permanently. Awareness that silence from the center of chaos is never neutral, no matter how often it's framed that way, and that's what makes this aftermath feel heavier than the initial explosion. The drama didn't end, it evolved. It embedded itself into reputations, expectations, and future storylines that haven't even begun yet. In a world where every moment is documented and every reaction archived, nothing truly resets. The confrontation went left, but the consequences went everywhere. And somewhere beneath the quiet, the next spark is already forming. Now don't click away like this was just another messy episode you'll forget by tomorrow. Moments like this don't go viral by accident. They explode because they expose patterns people have been side-eyeing for way too long. And if this triangle made you uncomfortable, congratulations! That means you saw past the entertainment and into the dysfunction that so do what the algorithm pretends it doesn't care about but absolutely lives for. Smash that like button like it just sat silent while chaos unfolded. Hit subscribe like you just realized nobody ever takes accountability in these storylines. And drop your take in the comments because this one is split straight down the middle. Was Chrisean right for checking the situation publicly, or did this whole triangle only go left because it was allowed to exist in the first place? Say it with your chest. Remember, scandals don't slow down here. They stack. While other pages chase the next shiny distraction, this channel stays breaking down why the same names keep showing up in the same mess with different faces. Love triangles, power plays, public embarrassment, and selective silence aren't accidents. They're patterns. If you're tired of watered-down takes and PR-friendly narratives, you already know this isn't that channel. This is where the mess gets unpacked, the behavior gets questioned, and the quiet parts get louder than the shouting. No filters, no favors. No pretending this stuff is normal, because the next confrontation is already loading. The next screenshot is already saved. And the next This Went Left moment is right around the corner. Welcome to Celeb Insanity, where the drama never plays fair. And we always catch the fallout.